Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Cult of SMMI. I am your host, Scott Mort. This has been a bit of a weird one. I'm sure a lot of you noticed that there was no episode last week. This episode had a lot of editing. There were some heavy subjects. I had to do, because of YouTube policy, I had to do a lot of censoring. And that took a lot of editing time. I think if you're of anywhere from average intelligence on up, which honestly, all of you seem that you are. I have a very, very intelligent audience. I think you'll figure out what the censored words are. However, I do already have one strike against this channel, and sadly I can't afford another. The strike that I have up there, it's definitely doesn't belong there. I've appealed it. It's no good will come of it. No good will come of it. So, if you want the whole story, then I implore you, head over to Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Amazon Podcasts, what have you. The less edited version will be over there. There's still going to be a fair amount of censorship. And after the show, we'll talk more about that. I have a little bit of a rant, if you'll indulge me. So you're going to get, if you go over to Spotify or Apple Podcasts, what have you, you're going to get about 15 minutes more of this show. With that in mind, trigger warning. There's going to be talk of unaliving. There is going to be talk of SA. It kills me to censor this stuff. But you do have the right to know that these things are coming up. I think we all knew that this was coming up. On to this week's episode.
Now we go into phase 2 of the weirdness. Okay, so now my middle sister and I are on this. We're trying to figure this out. We get a caseworker from the state. She hates my guts for some reason. I don't know why, but we're not getting along. And we're trying to deal with this. And again, this is all at my mom's house because Teresa's at my mom's house. So we're trying to figure this out. And to make a long story short, it was kind of like this battle to prove coercion. The big thing was coercion that my sister Teresa was coercing my mother into financial dealings and not getting care. Okay, that was what we were really hammering for. So, side note for the fun of it, I remembered going to see my mom at the house. I get there, and there's this young woman at the side of my mom's bed with a guitar, singing and playing for her. Now, that's a noble thing, and maybe one day I will even do it, to play for hospice patients. But it took every ounce of energy to go like, "Hey, Mom, don't you know you got somebody in house that does this? You know, I do play. Do you think my guitar playing sucks so bad that you had to outsource to somebody else?" So I just let it slide. But I'm like, "Really? You had to outsource to somebody else? I could, you do know your son's a guitar player, maybe you don't, whatever." So here's what happened in this long chain of events, in this weird chain of events. It is decided that the state will have a surprise inspection for this situation. So they come in and they surprise you. So like, if you know it's coming, it's like a restaurant inspection. If you know it's coming, you clean the kitchen, right? Mm-hmm. So they do a surprise inspection of my mom to catch it off guard, see what's up. So, was it a Friday? I forgot what happened, but we had this meeting at my mom's house, and I'm like, okay, so it'd be a surprise meeting. And okay, so my middle sister is there. I'm there, and we're talking to the caseworker, and then it's kind of inferred or said this it's going to go down. I can't tell you when. I'm like, okay, fine, but it's going to go down soon. At least she tells us. I don't care. So, but I'm like, okay, it's going down. So I'm figured, okay, finally it's going to come down. They're going to do it. They're going to pop by it the next morning at random. Everyone's going to be caught off guard. My mom hopefully will spill her guts. And let me also state that the house did not look in ill repair. I mean, it was fine. I mean, you drive by it, it's fine. You go in, it's fine. So everything was fine and hygienic. I don't want to make it seem like it was a madhouse, but it was the coercion was the problem. So I'm thinking everything is great. It turned out, and again, I don't know how this happened. I don't know whether it was some strange, demonic, weird psychic force, but somehow Teresa got wind of the fact that the next morning the state was going to show up. She gets on the phone with a lawyer, I think in Princeton, who was working pro bono for her. Because she was also involved in the cult in like a subsection. And so they're talking about what to do. My sister, Teresa, keeps my mother up all night long, hammering the crap out of her to tell her what to say and what to do when they come in the morning. So sure enough, they come in the morning, they show up. How does your daughter, Teresa, please go to another room. They ask my mom alone, what is your daughter like? She's an angel. Boom, done. So we got screwed again. So I was like losing my brain. Like I couldn't, I was getting shot down. Like, what is going on here? So I decided, okay, let me call the diocese. So I called the Diocese of Metuchen. I think I emailed them first, and I called them, and I'm like, hey, look, like, you have a nun in your diocese. She lives, the diocese, in case for those playing the home game, a diocese is like a territory. Like, so in other words, like the Diocese of Metuchen takes care of a bunch of towns around that area, and there's Diocese of Newark, whatever. It's like that's the bishop's territory, the turf. They got to take care of that. They got to see what's going on. They got to make it, that's their territory. So if something goes on in their turf, they're the ones responsible. Okay. So I call them up, and I tell them what's going on. Then I get handed over to the legal team. There's a guy, there's a man, there's a lawyer. He goes, hey, tell me what's going on. Tell me what's up. So I tell him, like, look, I got my sister's a nun. She's in your diocese. She's not of your diocese because she's of this other new order I can't even find the name of online. But she was Sisters Minor of Mary Immaculate. She's in your diocese in South River. She's tried to murder my mom twice. My wife and my other sister have seen this happen. And he goes, do you have any police reports? And I go, well, no, but it wasn't that way. He goes, no, we can't help you. Here's the kicker. Ready, Scott?
Ready.
He goes, you ready? He goes, yeah, well, we've seen this happen before, but normally it's after the mom's dead. I'm like, what the? Like, the guy literally said, yeah, I've seen this before, but we usually find out after the mom's dead. So this is not uncommon. Another nun or two had killed their mom to get the cash. And I'm like, so you're telling me this happens. You're telling me I'm telling you exactly that it is happening, and you're telling me you're not going to do anything. He goes, no police reports, can't help you. I'm like, can you just talk to her? No. Click.
Well, it's in my research, it is not hard to even do like a cursory search. Like, you can find very little about the Sisters Minor of Mary Immaculate, but you can find a lot about the abuse. I found one case, and I'm not going to give this lady's name. But this, according to her, she was held hostage by them in Connecticut. She had originally been invited to go on a retreat before going off to school in Europe. Now, this woman, she had been a devout Catholic, never had any intention of being a nun. Your sister, Sister Teresa, had tricked her into believing it would be a safe way for her to see the East Coast. And this was a month or a week before 9/11, the 9/11.
Oh, yeah. I think I know her, yeah.
Yeah.
Teresa, I know her.
Yeah, Teresa holds her a lot longer. Teresa cancels her flight, kept canceling her flight, and would come to this young lady's room every night telling her, no man will ever want you, you're not marriage material, and complain that your skirts are too short, and not allow her food, not allow her to read, no air conditioning for her on the hot days. And this was an Italian woman who was visiting, who was allowed to do whatever she wanted, but that wasn't her. Teresa would constantly compare this young lady to the Italian girl. Finally, the mother finds out, threatens to call the police. Teresa takes her for a scheduled flight. And
that sounds right.
That
checks all the boxes, dude. I think I know this person, not well, but I know that story. I think I talked to her one time. That everything you said checks all the boxes, and then some. Yeah, that's totally on point. It's totally what I've heard from other women. Totally, I've heard starvation, deprivation, food. Well, that whole thing. But eating rotten food. What else? Physical abuse. Oh my God, being kicked downstairs. A bunch of stuff. I've heard. I mean, everything and then some. I mean, it changes you. So no, it's spot on, dude. I mean, it's spot on what you're saying. Like that. That's right. And there's more. But again, please understand at the time when I'm dealing with my mom on hospice.
Oh yeah,
I knew none of this.
Couldn't find me. This was not for you to investigate. This was for the diocese. This was for the bishops to investigate. This wasn't your responsibility. Your mother was your responsibility.
Right. Well, they knew. Actually, they knew. I won't get ahead of myself, but you'll see where this thread is going. So watch this one. So I was screwed. I'm like, well, I got to save my mom. And the whole thing was, I got to save my mom. And if I'm going to be honest with you, it was like, at that time, I'm like, Teresa needs psychiatric care. That's my goal. She needs psych care. Get her a psych ward. Right. At that point in 2011, that was my focus. So I'm like, the diocese won't listen to me. Oh, okay, here's what I'm going to do. Teresa was teaching in South Jersey somewhere at a parish, right? Again, she's a good teacher. This is the one thing that she was, maybe still, I don't know. She's a teacher. So I get a letter and I write down everything that happened, and I say, to whom am I concerned, or dear pastor, and I write this letter about everything that happened, about the SMMI, about what I know. And I send it to my friends in Connecticut, and I go, hey, can you read? I think I asked them to read it over before I sent it, because I didn't want to screw them over. Because like, they're my friends, and I'm like, did I get this right? I don't want to screw up and have you take any. If I get something wrong, it's going to domino out and affect you. They were like, can we have a copy? I'm like, you can have as many copies as you want. And they sent one to Rome. So I wound up having enough frequent flyer points on my credit card after decades of having it to go to Hawaii. So my wife and I go to Hawaii. So we have this trip to Hawaii. Okay. So I send the letter out on a Tuesday, priority mail. It gets there on Thursday. We're leaving on Friday. Okay, to the pastor of the parish where my sister is, where Teresa is at. Right? So I send it, and they don't tell me they got it. Nothing. Okay, they figured they'd call me up, and be like, Mr. Kovacs, can we talk to you? Nothing. So Friday, because we're on the East Coast, we got to go from the East Coast to San Francisco. Then San Francisco, take a flight to Hawaii. So our cell phones are turned off on the East Coast. Then we stop in Hawaii, and we get out, and I turn my phone on, and it's like 5 messages. I'm like, what the hell? I mean, I'm like, and it's my middle sister screaming at me. She is screaming at me like, what? I'm like, This is my middle sister, not Teresa, my middle sister. I'm like, what in the what? So I'm like, oh, and I knew what happened. I kind of figured it. It was pretty easy, but here's what had happened. While I was in flight, Teresa came home. She spent the weekends at my mom's with her sidecar person, her side culty assistant, I guess, or whatever we want to call it. So she came back to the house. Teresa came back to my mom's house and went berserk. She went insane. Why? Because the pastor read the letter to her asking what was up. Didn't ask me, I read it to her. And I didn't know what the deal was because it turned so everything is now going insane at my mom's house. And I'm like, I'm here. I don't care. I'm like, I've done my best. This is the best I can do, So here's what caused my sister Teresa to go insane. Because I know how to work, I think I knew how to work the system. I put one sentence in there. It was, while there has been no known comma. Remember, no known. There has been a physical or whatever, right? So I had a couple things. I had nothing, but I couldn't say she was my sister. I had no idea. I just knew that, a couple things that I'd read online that were really hard to find. But that one phrase caused her to freak out. Now, you're saying to yourself, but why? Why would the priest not call you up and let her deal with this instead of you? Because it turns out the priest had a lawsuit about having relations with, I think, a seminarian or something. It was a lawsuit that's on the book somewhere. I found that out later. My other sister found that out later. I was like, oh, that makes sense why he wanted to cover it up.
Right.
He was on the hook for something. So, so we're out there, and I'm like, well, I'm in Hawaii, and then like at 3 in the morning Hawaii time, I get a call from my middle sister, and she's like, hey, mom's in the hospital. I'm like, but for what? Well, she spiked 103 plus fever, and it turns out she had a UTI, which is super common for people who are invalids or don't walk around much. So my mom had to sign away her hospice to get treatment, because you wouldn't get treatment. You would just take pain meds and you die because you're in hospital. So she signed away her hospice while I was away. So that flipped, but then that opened another door to something else. So this thing kept on shifting all the time. So she tried to kill her twice and it didn't work, and my mom bailed herself out the second time, but she would have cashed out because there's a bottle of morphine in the fridge. I remember my other sister called me up and was like, there's a bottle of morphine in the fridge, and I was like, get rid of it! Don't keep it there! She will use it at some point. So because at that point in 2011, they'd keep a small bottle of morphine for a drip. Now they don't do that. It's different, but I don't think they do it. But so there you go. So that's up to that point. So that's old. That's not even a year in. It got darker the year after that. That's when it got really dark. That's when I don't remember a lot. I actually blocked a lot of it out. But again, this is why God bless you for letting me talk about it, because I want people to know, is because the worst part was that no one would listen. Right? It was horrible, and that's when I became because no one would listen to me, and I knew there was these problems with these nuns. So I was like, so I think it was the next year is and no one really knows about this. So here you go, but.
Now for my rant. I think that the YouTube censorship policy is doing more harm than it is good. Whenever we speak of unaliving, we know exactly what we're talking about. You know it, I know it. It's just a prettier word for the same thing. And the comedian George Carlin once said that if you take the pain out of the word, that a lot of the times you take away the urgency of that word. I think we as a society and we as creators need to have a long discussion about the real harm that censoring these words can do. Whenever you soften the language, you dull down the urgency of the problem. And I think that little bit of discomfort is worth getting the real help that you get in the end. It's like getting, I can't even use that word anymore, the V word, because of the ridiculous way society is. It's like, I'll have to put it as getting a tooth filled, right? Whenever you get that injection of anesthetic to get that tooth filled or pulled, you're putting up with a little pain now to get a much better result later. And I think that whenever we take away the pain of these words, we soften them up. We're taking away the benefits that the urgency of that word creates. That's neither here nor there. Ran over. I want to thank you so much for joining us. I know this was a tough episode, especially if you're listening on one of the other platforms, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, what have you. And I thank you for hearing me out. There will be another episode next week. Thank you once again. Take care of yourselves and each other.